Hobson's Choice sat hunched on the corner of Oldfield Road, its brick walls stained with decades of smoke, rain, and stories nobody liked to repeat. Locals said the pub was older than it looked, older even than the road itself, built on ground that had never quite settled and never quite slept. Charlotte worked behind the bar most nights. A single mom of two, she took every shift she could get, pulling pints until her hands ached and wiping down tables long after the regulars staggered out. She never complained. She just wanted to give her children a life better than the one she'd been handed. But Hobson's Choice had other ideas. It began with whispers faint, drifting noises that floated along the bar when the place emptied around midnight. Charlotte always thought it was the pipes or the wind rattling down Oldfield Road. But then she started hearing a man's voice. Cold night, isn't it? Charlotte, no footsteps, no door opening, just the voice. Then one night he appeared. A tall, thin man in an old gray coat stood at the far end of the bar. His skin was pale, almost translucent, and his eyes were sunken, like he'd spent decades underground. Charlotte blinked, startled. She hadn't heard the door. "Evenin'," he said, nodding politely. His voice was soft, distant, as though filtered through water. "What can I get you?" she asked, trying to ignore the way the air had grown sharp and icy. The man smiled, but it was a sorrowful smile, one that didn't reach his eyes. "Nothing to drink. I'm only here to make sure you get home safe." Those words rooted her to the spot. She hadn't told him her name. And something about the way he watched her, like someone who remembered a life he no longer had, made her breath catch. When she turned for a second to grab a glass, he vanished. No fade, no steps, just gone. There were stories about the cellar under Hobson's Choice. Oldfield Road residents whispered that the pub had been built over a line of forgotten workers' tunnels, places where men had died, trapped in collapses, long before Salford's modern streets existed. Charlotte had always hated the cellar. It felt alive. She could swear it breathed. Some nights, the heavy door would creak open on its own. Cold air, damp, stale, heavy, would drift up like invisible fingers reaching for her ankles. Once, during a lockup, she saw something else. A handprint smeared in condensation across the fridge door. A man's hand, long-fingered, pressed from the inside. She wiped it away with shaking hands, but the mark left a shadow in the glass, like a stain time refused to clean. The ghostly man in the gray coat returned often, but never with sound. Charlotte usually spotted him in reflections, the beer taps, the jukebox, the mirror behind the bar. He looked sad, always sad. "Get home early tonight," he'd murmur. "Don't go into the cellar. They're restless tonight." His warnings chilled her more than the haunting itself. Because if he was warning her, what was he warning her from? It happened on a bitter December night. Frost clung to the windows, and Oldfield Road was deadly silent. Only two customers lingered, old men who didn't notice the way the lights flickered, or how Charlotte kept glancing at the cellar door. Near midnight, the power went out. The pub fell into a black so perfect it felt thick. Heavy, like a blanket thrown over the world. Then came the sound. Dragging. Slow. Wet. From below. Something was climbing the cellar steps. Charlotte backed away, her heart battering her ribs. The air stank of damp earth and rotting wood. She felt a presence, big, old, and angry, creeping closer with every breath. Her phone light flicked on and revealed the man in the gray coat standing right beside her, closer than he had ever been. His face was tense for the first time. "Charlotte," he whispered, "run." A deep groan rolled through the pub, like ancient beams bending under impossible weight. The cellar door began to open inch by inch, revealing only darkness, but a darkness that moved. The ghost grabbed her arm. His touch was ice. "I'll hold it," he hissed. "Go home to your children. Don't look back." The force slamming into the cellar door shook the shelves, rattled the glasses, and made the floor tremble. Something scratched along the wood from the inside, something with nails. Charlotte ran. Oldfield Road was empty as she burst outside, but even in the winter air she could feel heat on the back of her neck, as though something had chased her right to the pavement before the man forced it back. She quit the next day. She didn't explain. The owner didn't ask. Some nights, though, when she tucks her children into bed, she thinks of the ghost in the gray coat, the one who knew her name, who stood guard at Hobson's choice. Whatever haunts the cellar beneath Oldfield Road, it wasn't him. He was protecting her from it. And sometimes, when the house is quiet and her children are asleep, she swears she hears a soft voice carried on the cold night air. "Safe now, Charlotte. You're safe."